So we've uncovered the hardware, the terrifying physics of these solid fuel rockets and all that, the implications of that. Israel are interpreting that posture as intent, and they think of the payload. We said it before in the last recording we did. If you're building a better gun, these missiles, you are going to fire the bullet, and the bullet is the nuclear payload. We're going to call this now the software. So we talked about the hardware, the missiles. Now we're going to talk about the software, which we're going to kind of interpret as the rhetoric or the words, the actual words that are being broadcast, the public chants of death to America, death to Israel, the posturing of the massive banners in Tehran, speeches by the regime leaders, like explicitly promising to wipe out I quote, wipe out the Zionist entity off the map. And this is where we found the translation gap was so massive, and it's most dangerous as well, because when the Western diplomats, when the academics, when the intelligence analogists of the West hear that rhetoric, they frequently engage in something we have discovered. It's called rhetorical discounting, and the Western analyst is going to look at that, like these chants, death to Israel. And, it looks a bit more like brand banishment. It's like red meat for the hardline domestic base that they've got, keeping the regime in power. Yeah, like in UK politics, it is interesting to draw an analogy here when leaders lean into things like, I don't know, immigration, or, the slogans, take back control, or, this is firing up a core base, isn't it? Yeah, so when we hear strong rhetoric, we are thinking political messaging. We're not necessarily taking it as literal intent, especially stuff like this. Yeah, and there's the gap, isn't it? We assume it's more like theatre, and our English Parliament is full of theatre. But we've also got something else, haven't we, underneath the surface? Yeah, we've got a framework that we have in our psychology from the Cold War, and it's shortened as MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction. Which is so acronym, MAD. It kind of says it all, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. But so in this situation, that's a rational framework in our consciousness. We project that, our own rational self-preservation, onto them, and we think, yeah, sure, they say they want to destroy us, but they know that if Israel's got like an amazing military, they've got undeclared nuclear weapons, and they know that if they try to wipe out Israel, they're going to be turned to glass in return. Therefore everyone ultimately wants to live, surely. It's a bluff. Yeah, we filter their words through our own survival mechanisms, our instincts, and we assume that underneath the religious rhetoric, the revolutionary rhetoric, they are actually rational human beings, state actors who value the continuation of the regime above all else. That's our calculation of them. Yeah, but Israel, they're operating with a different filter, aren't they? We've already talked about the lack of strategic depth they've got. And it's actually, again, it's another name, just like strategic depth, frontline filter. Israel is operating with a frontline filter, and history of the region is completely unwilling to brush off this rhetoric. And honestly, who could blame them? I've got to admit, I really do struggle with the Western perspective on this. It really does require a lot of cognitive dissonance, because if I am Israel and someone explicitly, repeatedly over decades says they want to kill me, and they are simultaneously spending billions of dollars that they haven't got, starving their own economy to build the exact 15-minute solid fuel delivery architects are required to do it, their rhetoric is backed up with their actions. It just feels like the Western perspective seems to be leaning into a naivety. Well, it's like the bully in the playground. It's like, oh, don't listen to the words, Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But here, the rhetoric, the words,
is backed up by sticks and stones. It's all pointing in the same direction, you know. So the Western perspectives say it's just words, you know, and we can have talks and stuff. But the counter-argument presented by the Israeli strategic planners, for them it's just common sense. When a hostile genocidal rhetoric is paired with the active funding of armed proxy groups miles away from your borders that are encircling your borders.
And again, within the framework of sanctions of not much money.
Yeah. You know, Hamas are to the south of Israel and Hezbollah to the north. They got militias in Syria and Iraq. Houthis, probably funded by them. I think they are.
Yeah, I think they are.
And paired with the refusal to permanently and transparently dismantle their nuclear enrichment programs, they come to talks. But it's been shown that it's still going on. And I think Israel know that. And I think that's the background of some of the small skirmishes they've done over the years to deal with that, because their intel is probably telling them something very different.
I think the West interpretation really needs to shift. It's not symbolic antagonism. It's not this domestic posturing. It's structural. It's obvious that it's methodical, and it's obvious that there's a preparation going on to actually do what the rhetoric is saying, this annihilation of Israel. Maybe leading to America, but that's another story.
We're not talking about America here, to be honest. Just to lump Israel with America is really not useful. They are on the same side, but they're certainly not the same nation, the same people. And the threats to Israel are very different to the threats to America. As I've said before, there's a very visceral frontline reality to Israel's positioning in this existential rhetoric. And although some intent may be aligned with America, and we're not ruling that out, and some people may be listening who know what we're talking about, but the everyday lived reality is what we're talking about here. And the West, because of our distance from this, have almost built a Hollywood movie on this situation. But this is about looking into the lives of everyday Israelis who are waking up every morning, going to the bakers, getting their daily bread, trying to carve out a life in this very difficult neighborhood, living in a crucible with untold resources being pumped into putting that fire out that is constantly at threat of being lit. And we're going to talk about it later on, but this kind of mirrors the reality of everyday Iranians. So we want to keep that perspective.